How's it going, everyone? Welcome to part 2 of the PU guide. So far we have covered the PU basics and we explored the phases and what happens in them. Now in this part we'll look at what happens in different disputed succession scenarios and what you should do in these scenarios. There are 7 possible scenarios and we will go through each of them. Now obviously we don't know for sure which phase the target country is currently on, but we can make a guess based on the limited knowledge we have of how the phases work, and if we cannot, we have the tooltip to figure out what to do anyways. Keeping that in mind, let's look at the 7 scenarios. Scenario 1. You don't share a dynasty and target country doesn't have an heir. You will encounter this scenario most frequently, so it's important to understand what to do here. The minimum aim here is to get your dynasty on the target country throne, so you have an option for PU in future. Also, keep increasing your development as your chances of spreading dynasty increases with higher autonomy modified development. Now check to see what happens after monarch death. If a noble is succeeding, royal marry them. If it now says that a noble from your house is succeeding, you have the highest autonomy modified development among potential contenders, and a dynasty spread is pretty nice. You can claim throne in future and declare if you can take on their allies. In this scenario, the target is likely in phase 0. If you get your dynasty on their throne and they don't have any heir or have a weak heir, you can claim throne immediately and declare war the next month. This might lead to either truce break if you're allies, or at least a stab hit and war exhaustion because of the RM. It's up to you if you consider target country provinces to be worth the hassle and if you can take on their allies. Remember that the claim throne CB goes away if the target country gets a strong heir, so you have to act fast. If the tooltip says they are going to be inherited by another country, RM them immediately. If you have more autonomy modified development than the other country, you will get the inheritance. In this case, the target country was in phase 1 obviously, and we know that this phase only lasts for 5 years, so pray to paradox gods that the monarch dies soon. If the tooltip says that the target country will be under PU or a succession war will follow, they are either in phase 1 or phase 2. If they are friendly towards you, RM them and you might get a PU or get a succession war. And as we learned in the last section, if you claim throne and you have the highest autonomy modified development, you will be the defender. If the target country is hostile towards you, either rival them or the current defensive claimant. This would trigger a succession war, and if you have the highest military rating, you will be the aggressor. The succession war mechanics can be a little confusing, but you should know that it's a very good way to get PUs. And that's why you should rival a couple of bigger nations. The reason is that if you cannot get your dynasty on the target country, you can still PU them if your rival decides to contest succession. This way, you don't have to wait for your dynasty spread to get the PU. Another thing to remember is that if the target country goes to war, there won't be a PU or even a succession war. As I mentioned earlier, it's a condition that a country cannot go under direct PU or succession war if they are at war themselves. So to increase your chances of PU, you can warn all the countries that might go to war against the target country. And that concludes the first scenario. This was the longest section. As I mentioned, it's most likely to happen, and so we needed to delve a little deeper into it. Scenario 2. You don't share a dynasty and they have a weak heir. You can't do much in this situation unless they have a regent who is a consort of your dynasty, in which case you can claim throne and force PU. The consort mechanic really opens up a lot of new options, and you can use them to spread your dynasty as well by marrying a nation immediately after a new monarch comes to power. You have 50% chance of getting your consort. It's a long shot and probably not a viable strategy, but I just wanted to mention it here. Scenario 3. You share a dynasty and they have no heir. If you have more autonomy modified development than the RM partners of the target country, there will be direct PU. If one of the RM countries have more autonomy modified development than you, there will be a succession war, in which case you should claim throne anyways so you can be the defender. On rare occasions, when your autonomy modified development is a lot more than your target country and there is no other relevant contender, you will get the PU automatically without the need for claim throne CB. It happens very rarely. Scenario 4. You have a dynasty and they have a weak claim heir, or a regency council for a weak claim heir. You can claim throne and force PU. If you're allied to them, you can decide if breaking truce is worth it or not. If they have a regency, check how long their regency is. If it's longer than 5 years, claim throne and dissolve alliance immediately. Wait for truce timer to end and force PU war. If the regency isn't longer than 5 years, you can decide if you want to truce break or not. It will depend on how much AE you can eat and how valuable the territory is to you. Scenario 5. Succession wars. We already discussed succession wars earlier in this guide, but we will do a quick review here again since it's a bit complex. Succession war has a defender and an attacker. In the tooltip, the defender will always be listed first. For example, here Saxe-Lauenburg monarch is heirless, and the tooltip says there will be a succession war between Austria and Brunswick. So if the monarch dies heirless, Austria will be the defender and Brunswick will be the attacker. A defender in a succession war is a nation who has an RM with the target nation and shares the same dynasty. Among all RM partners, defender is the one with highest autonomy modified development. An attacker in a succession war is a nation who has the highest military rank, and we talked about military rank earlier. They must be either a RM partner to the target nation or be rival to the target nation or the succession war defender. Like I mentioned earlier, this is the reason you should rival the bigger nations, as that gives you a chance to get PUs via succession wars without any dynasty spread. The attacker nation will get an option to either contest the PU or not, which will decide if you go to war or not. Scenario 6. Inheritance. We learned that a country can get inheritance during phase 1 if the target country has less than 15 provinces and you have more than twice the provinces as the target country. This inheritance chance can be increased slightly by higher diplorep, higher stability, less number of provinces in the target country, and if the target country is in the same culture group as you. This is extremely rare as phase 1 lasts only 5 years and you have to meet the number of provinces criteria as well. There is another inheritance that can happen, and if you have played Austria, you might have seen this before. It's the inheritance of a PU subject under you. The tooltip will show you the % chance of you inheriting your PU subject on monarch death. This is affected by the same factors as above, that is diplorep, stability, number of provinces, and culture group. There is some evidence that this inheritance chance cannot be increased by save scumming, and it was probably put there by the devs to prevent PU inheritance from happening too often, which is fair in my opinion. If you see a high enough % chance to inherit your PU, you can consider abdicating your ruler as well, especially if you have multiple PU subjects and all of them have a higher inheritance chance. It's just an option that you can use. I'm currently doing an Austria PU heavy game, as you can probably tell from all the screenshots. In this game, I got 3 PU inheritances. That means I did not spend any diplo or admin points to get these huge number of provinces. I will be uploading a separate guide for it, oriented for a PU game with Austria in the next week or so be sure to check that out. Scenario 7. Interregnum. This is the last scenario, and interregnum happens when a dynasty in game dies out. Say a nation has a regency council and their heir dies while they don't have the dynasty anywhere else. It's a rare event. Countries like Bohemia and Poland have interregnum at start of the game. To get a PU with an interregnum country, royal marry them. If you have the highest diplo rep among their RM partners, you have a high chance of getting your dynasty on the throne. This might not last for long, so as soon as you see your dynasty name, immediately claim throne and force PU. And that concludes our 7 different scenarios where you can get a PU over other nations. Are you guys still with me? Good, because we are going to the last section of this video. We will look at some general tips that might help you play the PU game better. You can get your dynasty on another country without royal marriage if they have a royal marriage partner who has your dynasty. See how the dynasty spreads without you doing anything? You can see who has the same dynasty as you from the tooltip as well. Like I said before, this tooltip and the disputed succession alert are your best friends in PU game. Keep checking the disputed succession alert every couple of months and your diplomacy tooltip frequently as well. If the target country has PU subjects of their own, you will get those subjects as well. That is why PU mechanic is so overpowered. Imagine that Austria has Hungary and Bohemia under PU, which happens regularly, and you can force Austria under you and you get Hungary and Bohemia for free. If the target country has vassals, they don't become your vassals though. If the target country has colonial nations, they will remain with the target country as well, but when you integrate the target country, the colonial nations become your colonial nations, even if you don't have exploration or expansion ideas. This is great in that you get free colonial nations, but also bad if you're trying to do a one-tag world conquest. If you manage to get a bigger nation under you as PU, make sure you have a couple of strong allies for when they inevitably declare independence war. PU subjects can have liberty desire just like vassals. However, they only look at their own strength when calculating liberty desire, unlike vassals who look at combined strength of all vassals. If your heir dies while your monarch is super old, declare war immediately and be at war till either your monarch dies or you get an heir. You cannot go under PU if you are at war. I already mentioned that prestige and high development is important to play the PU game. Another thing that's important is the Diplo-Rep. It will help you get RMs with nations that don't even like you. If you're playing the PU game properly, you'll have a lot of RMs, and most of them won't yield the PU. Breaking RM costs -1 stab hit, which is pretty bad. So either take Diplo Ideas, which means breaking RM cost only -1 prestige and no stab hit, or become the Curia controller, in which case you can break the RM all the time. There's a rare event that can give you PU over your neighbor of same religion and culture if you both have no heirs and satisfy some other criteria. There's another event called Marriage Policy Pays Off, where you can get an heir of your dynasty on foreign throne. This happens if you have at least 4 royal marriages. You can claim throne and force PU through war there. Disinheriting your heir trick. Marry a nation of the dynasty you want to obtain, such as Austria, and then disinherit your heir when your ruler gets old. Go to war then until your ruler dies and a noble from the desired dynasty will rule your nation, provided that nation is your biggest development RM partner. Note that you need to go to war until this happens to avoid succession war over your nation. Now you have their dynasty and you can play the claim throne game if they get a weak claim heir. I've seen this comment a couple of times saying, "Oh no, I got the von Habsburg, Austria is going to PU me now." No, dynasties don't have dynasty leader. You are as much of a von Habsburg as Austria is now. So if they can PU you, you can PU them as well. And finally, the last point, pray. And always remember, you don't question the whim of paradox gods. And that concludes this exhaustive tutorial on PU. I doubt anyone would have stayed with me throughout the video in one sitting at least. But if you did, congratulations! You now know everything there is to know about PUs. Well, almost everything. There are still some formula we can look at. I'm just kidding. Make sure you check out the links in the description below. They will help you a bit as well. Thanks for watching, and I hope this video helps with your PU game.